The Master's Final Test, Part 1. The Summons. The telegram was waiting on his desk on a Wednesday morning, underneath a stack of student registration forms and a utility bill that had been there long enough to become furniture. Chuck Norris had been at the dojo since 5, which was his usual hour, the hour before the world made demands, the hour that belonged entirely to the work. He had run his forms in the empty room, worked the heavy bag for 40 minutes, and eaten a banana and 2 hard-boiled eggs at his desk while reviewing the enrollment numbers for the new session. He was 33 years old, and he had been running his own school for 9 years, and the rhythms of it had long since become as natural as breathing. The early mornings, the full afternoons, the particular quality of satisfaction that came from watching a student understand something they hadn't understood yesterday. He noticed the telegram the way you notice things that are slightly out of place, not immediately, but with the particular peripheral attention that long training develops, the awareness that something in the environment is not where it should be. He picked it up, read it. Master Park Sung-jin in Hospital Seoul. Asks for you, come soon. Kim Ji-young, student. He put the telegram down and looked at it for a moment, the way you look at something that has just changed the shape of the day, and then he picked up the phone and called his travel agent. Master Park Sung-jin. The name returned to him not as a fact but as a texture, the particular quality of presence that the old man had carried, the silence he brought into a room, the way his instructions, when he gave them, arrived with the precision of something that had been refined over so many decades that all the excess had been removed and only the essential remained. Chuck had trained under him for 9 months at Osan Air Base in 1959, which was not a long time. 9 months was a season. It was the length of a school year. In the arithmetic of a life, it should have been a footnote. It had been one of the 3 most formative experiences of his existence. He had not seen Park Sung-jin since the morning he shipped back to California. Since the specific quality of that last morning, the tea, the particular quality of light through the school's north window, the old man's last instruction delivered not as instruction, but as simple statement: keep the practice honest, everything else will follow. He had been 19 years old. He had not fully understood what that meant. He had spent 14 years discovering what it meant. The flight to Seoul was 18 hours. He booked it for Thursday. Part 2. The Hospital Room. The hospital was in the Jongno district, a white concrete building that smelled the way hospitals always smell. The antiseptic beneath which, if you were paying attention, was the smell of the body's ongoing negotiations with its own limits. The student, Kim Ji-young, was waiting in the lobby. A young woman in her mid-20s with the quiet composure of someone trained in a discipline that teaches composure as a practice rather than a personality trait. She bowed and said little, which told Chuck that the situation was serious and that she understood the seriousness was not hers to narrate. She led him to the 4th floor. Park Sung-jin was in a room at the end of a corridor, in a bed by the window that looked out over a courtyard where a single ginkgo tree was dropping its leaves in the late October wind. He was 83 years old, and he was small in the way of old men, not diminished exactly, but concentrated, as though the decades had compressed the essential substance of him into a smaller surface area without reducing its density. His breathing was measured and deliberate, the breathing of someone managing the process with conscious attention. When Chuck appeared in the doorway, the old man's eyes opened. They were the same eyes, alert and dark, and containing the particular quality of attention that had always made Chuck feel, in the early months of training, that he was being read rather than observed. "You came," Master Park said, in English, exactly as he had said it the first time Chuck had appeared at his school in 1959. "You came," as though arrival were itself a kind of answer. "You asked," Chuck said. He pulled the chair from beside the wall and sat close to the bed, and for a moment they simply held the silence between them, which was something they had always been able to do. The silence of people who have been in the same room with difficulty and know that not everything needs to be said to be understood. "How long?" Chuck said. "The doctors say weeks," the old man said. "I think perhaps longer. I have always found doctors somewhat pessimistic about the timetable." He paused. "But I did not ask you to come to discuss timetables." "I know. I asked you to come because I have something to give you. Not a thing, a task, a final instruction." He looked at Chuck with steady eyes. "And because you are the only person I can ask to do it." Chuck waited. This was one of the first things Park Sung-jin had taught him 14 years ago. The patience to let a thing arrive in its own time rather than reaching for it. Most of his early errors in training had been about reaching, about moving toward the technique rather than letting the technique come to him. He had spent years learning the difference. He had never fully arrived at perfect practice of it, but he had learnt enough to wait. "There is a student," the old man said. "His name is Han Sung-won. He has been with me for 6 years. He is 28 years old, and he is the most technically accomplished student I have ever taught." He paused. "He is also the most technically accomplished student I have ever been afraid for." "Afraid why?" "Because he is perfect. And perfection, in this practice, is the most dangerous condition there is." Chuck looked at his teacher. "Explain that." "When a student is imperfect, when they struggle, when they fail, when the technique does not come easily, they develop a relationship with the practice that has humility in it. They know what it cost them. They know what can be lost." The old man looked at the window, at the ginkgo tree in the courtyard. "Han Sung-won has never had to pay that price. Everything I have shown him, he has absorbed immediately and completely. He has never failed a technique. He has never been beaten in sparring. He has never experienced the specific education that comes from losing and having to reconstruct yourself." He paused. "In competition, he is extraordinary. In life, he is brittle, and he does not know it. What do you need from me?" Park Sung-jin turned from the window and looked directly at Chuck. "I need you to give him a test he cannot pass with technique alone. I need you to show him what cannot be won by being perfect. And I need you to do this in a way that teaches rather than breaks." He paused. "I could not do this myself. I am too close to him and I am dying, which changes the weight of everything I say. But you," he considered, "you are a champion. He will respect that, and you have no investment in his ego, which means you can do what I cannot." Chuck was quiet for a moment. "What kind of test?" "Not a fight," the old man said immediately. "A fight would give him what he already has. He would win, and the win would confirm what he already believes about himself." "No," he paused. "I will show you. Tomorrow morning, come to the school. You should rest." "Tomorrow morning," the old man repeated, with the particular finality that Chuck remembered from his own training years, the voice that was not unkind, but was entirely non-negotiable. Chuck nodded. "Tomorrow morning." He stayed for another hour, sitting beside the bed, and they talked about things that were not the test and not the dying, about the practice, about the school, about a student from 15 years ago who had written a letter from somewhere in Vietnam that the old man still kept in the drawer of his desk at the school. They did not talk about the letter at length. Some things are not about length. They are about acknowledgement, about the fact of the thing being present in the room. When Chuck left, the old man was already asleep. He slept with the same quality he did everything else, completely, without residue. Part 3. The school in the morning. The school was as he remembered it, and also entirely different, which is what happens to places when you carry them inside you for 14 years. You build a version of them in memory that is accurate in feeling and impressionistic in detail, and then the real version reasserts itself with its specific textures and dimensions, and the memory has to make room. The building was the same. The worn wooden exterior, the paper sign, the smell of pine floors that hit Chuck in the chest the moment he stepped inside. The school was different, larger, with a second room added at the back, and a wall of photographs that had not been there in 1959, photographs of students and tournaments and demonstrations, dozens of them, spanning what appeared to be 40 years of practice. Chuck scanned them without moving, cataloging. Han Sung-won was already there when Chuck arrived, which was the first thing Chuck noted. The young man had come early. He was 28 years old, and he was, physically, a precise and impressive person, not large but balanced, with the kind of body that had been trained to such completeness that it moved even in stillness, with an efficiency that was immediately apparent. He bowed correctly when Chuck entered. His expression was attentive and neutral, the expression of a student in the presence of someone whose significance he has been informed of, but not yet personally established. Chuck sat. Han Sung-won sat across from him. "Master Park asked me to work with you," Chuck said. "He didn't tell you what this was about." "No. Do you want to know?" A pause. Something moved across the young man's face, a micro-expression that Chuck read as the conflict between the honest answer and the performed one. Then, "I want to know if it is something I should be concerned about." "Why would you be concerned?" "Because Master Park is dying, and when a dying man summons a world champion from another country, it suggests the matter is not ordinary." He paused. "I would like to understand what I am being asked to do." Chuck looked at him. "You're being asked to do something you've never done before." "What is that?" "We'll get to it," Chuck said. "First, show me your practice." Also, the shape of his perfection. Han Sung-won's technique was extraordinary. There was no other word for it. Chuck had trained for 14 years, had competed at the highest levels, had sparred with men whose ability was the product of similar decades of committed work, and he had developed over that time a precise internal calibration for quality. Not just technical proficiency, but the quality of engagement behind the technique, the presence that distinguished the excellent from the merely accomplished. Han Sung-won moved through his forms with a control that would have been remarkable in a man twice his age. Every movement was where it should be, every transition was clean, his timing was perfect. Not the mechanical perfection of someone who has memorized a sequence, but the organic perfection of someone who has fully absorbed the logic of what they are doing and is now simply being it. Chuck watched him for 20 minutes without comment. Then he said, "Stop." Han Sung stopped and stood at rest, breathing easily. "Spar with me," Chuck said. They sparred for 15 minutes. It confirmed what the forms had suggested. The young man was exceptional. He read Chuck's movement accurately, adjusted continuously, found openings that less attentive opponents would have missed. Twice he landed techniques that, in a full contact context, would have been significant. He never showed frustration, never got reckless, never made the error that impatience produces. When they stopped, Chuck was breathing harder than the young man was. "You're very good," Chuck said. "Thank you." That wasn't entirely a compliment. Han Sung-won was quiet. His face did not change expression, which was itself a kind of information. "Tell me about the last time you failed at something," Chuck said. A long pause. "In sparring?" "Anywhere. In this practice or outside of it. Tell me about a failure." The young man thought. Chuck watched him think. "I lost a tournament match in 29-69. I was 19. The judge's decision was incorrect. I had clearly scored." "That's not a failure," Chuck said. "That's an injustice. They're different. Try again." Longer pause. "I do not recall a significant failure." "I know," Chuck said. "That's the problem." Part 5. The Test. He designed the test in consultation with Kim Ji-young that evening, over tea at a small restaurant near the hospital. She was 25 years old and had been with Master Park for 7 years, and she knew Han Sung-won the way you know someone you have trained alongside, not as an idea but as a specific daily reality, with all the specificity that implies. He is the best student Master Park has ever had, she said. He knows this. Everyone knows it. Master Park has never said it to him, but Handsome One knows. Does it affect his training? His training is immaculate. It affects everything outside his training. She held the teacup with both hands. Last year, one of the junior students asked him for help with a technique he was struggling with. Handsome One demonstrated it correctly 3 times. The student still did not understand. Handsome One said, not unkindly but precisely, that the student's difficulty was a failure of attention. He could not understand why someone would fail to understand what was, to him, entirely clear. What happened? The student left the school. She paused. Handsome One was not wrong technically. The student's attention was inconsistent, but he was also not right. There is a difference between being technically accurate and being wise. Chuck nodded. Master Park said he was afraid for him. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Han Sang-won is being offered a position at a prestigious institution in Seoul, a teaching position. If he takes it, he will spend years shaping young students, and if he teaches the way he trains, with technical perfection as the primary standard, he will produce students who are technically excellent and emotionally fragile, exactly like himself. And if he doesn't take it, he has been offered a position in a small school in Busan, much less prestigious. Many more challenging students, working-class families, older adults, children with learning difficulties, students who will require a different kind of teaching than what Han Sang-won has ever done. She looked at Chuck. Master Park wants him to take the Busan position, but he cannot tell him that. It would be an instruction, and Han Sang-won has always followed instructions well. Master Park wants him to choose it, to understand why it is the right choice without being told, and the test is supposed to make him understand that. The test is supposed to make him feel what he has never felt, she said. The experience of not being able to do something well, and to discover whether that experience breaks him or teaches him. Chuck was quiet for a long time. What is the thing he cannot do well? Kim Ji-young almost smiled. He cannot teach someone who learns the way he does not. Han 6. What happened in the school? The following morning, Chuck brought a student to the school. The student's name was Lee Min-jae. He was 11 years old, the son of a woman who cleaned the building where the restaurant was located. He had been taking informal lessons from a neighborhood instructor for 8 months and had developed, in those 8 months, a collection of deeply ingrained technical errors that would require months of patient work to correct. He also had a quality that Chuck had noticed immediately when Kim Ji-young introduced them, an absolute joyful enthusiasm for the practice that made his technical imperfections entirely irrelevant to the experience of being around him. Han Sang-won stood in the center of the school floor. He looked at the 11-year-old. He looked at Chuck. "Teach him the first 3 movements of the opening form," Chuck said. Han Sang-won regarded this request with the slight stillness of someone recalibrating. It was not the task he had expected. Whatever he had expected, a further test of his own ability perhaps, or some examination of advanced technique, this was not it. But he was a disciplined student, and he showed nothing beyond the pause. He demonstrated the first movement to Lee Min-jae. Once, clearly, slowly, Lee Min-jae attempted it. His weight distribution was wrong, his elbow was too high, and his finish position was approximately correct but arrived at through an incorrect path. All 3 of these errors were individually easy to correct. Han Sang-won corrected them precisely and accurately. Lee Min-jae tried again. 2 of the 3 errors disappeared. The third, the elbow, persisted. Han Sang-won corrected it again. Lee Min-jae tried a 3rd time. The elbow was correct. The weight distribution had shifted back to the original error. Chuck watched Han Sung-won's face. He watched the young man manage his expression, the effort required to maintain patience in the presence of a student who appeared to undo one correction in the process of applying another. He watched the precise, controlled nature of the correction becoming, by the fifth repetition, fractionally clipped. Not unkind, but efficient in a way that efficiency is not always kind. After 8 repetitions, Lee Min-jae laughed, not at himself, at the movement. He found something in it genuinely funny, a quality of physical comedy in his own awkwardness that he was able to observe with the unself-consciousness of a child who has not yet learned to be embarrassed by imperfection. Han Sung-won looked at the laughing child, and something happened in his face that Chuck had been waiting for. Not frustration. Frustration would have been a recognizable response and would have been, in its familiarity, manageable. What happened was confusion. The young man was genuinely uncertain how to continue in the presence of a student who laughed at his own errors. Why does he laugh? Han Sung-won said quietly. Chuck said nothing. He is not learning correctly. The error persists. There is nothing. What does the laugh mean? Chuck said. Han Sung-won looked at Lee Min-jae, who had stopped laughing and was now looking at the older man with the attentive curiosity of a child who has noticed an adult doing something interesting. I don't know, Han Sung-won said. He loves it, Chuck said. The movement, the practice, the feeling of his own body trying to do something it hasn't done before. He loves all of it, including the part where it doesn't work yet. He paused. He's going to come back tomorrow, and the day after, not because he wants to be correct, because he loves being in the room. Han Sung-won was quiet. You learned everything you were taught the first time, Chuck said. So you have never experienced the feeling of coming back because you love it despite not being good at it. You have never needed to love it. You have always been able to be good at it. He paused. But the students you are going to teach, most of them will not learn the first time. They will come back because they love it, or they will not come back at all. And the question you have to answer is whether you can teach the ones who love it more than they are good at it. Han Sung-won looked at the child, then back at Chuck. Something in his face was different, not broken, not diminished, but opened, as though a window had been cracked in a room that had been sealed a long time. I don't know how, he said. I know, Chuck said. That's where you start. Epilogue. The letter. Master Park Sung-jin died 6 weeks later in the hospital room with the ginkgo tree in the courtyard. Kim Ji-young was with him. He had been conscious the morning before and had dictated a brief letter to each of his significant students. Chuck received his copy 3 weeks after the funeral, forwarded to the Torrance dojo in an envelope with Kim Ji-young's handwriting on the outside. He read it at his desk on a Tuesday morning. Chuck, you came when I called, which is what I expected. You did what I asked, which was more difficult, and you did it well. What I did not expect was that you would also teach Han Sung-won the thing I could not the test which I designed, but the answer which I did not. He asked me in the last week how a person learns to teach someone who learns differently from how they learned. I told him I did not know and that this was the point. He understood. He has accepted the position in Busan. What you gave him was not technique. It was the knowledge that the most important things cannot be demonstrated, only undergone. I have been trying to teach this for 50 years. You taught it in a morning, which is either because you are extraordinary or because you understood it from the position of experience rather than theory. I think both. The practice continues in the ones who carry it. You have carried it honestly. Keep doing so. Park Sung-jin. Chuck folded the letter carefully along its original creases and put it in the inside pocket of his jacket, where it remained for the rest of the day, and for many days after, a weight small enough to carry without effort, and heavy enough to know it was there. Outside, the first students of the morning were pulling into the parking lot. He could hear the car doors, the particular sound of people arriving for something they had chosen to make room for in their lives. He had been taught by an old Korean man in a room that smelled of pine floors. He had carried that teaching across 14 years and an ocean and had, on one ordinary morning in Seoul, passed some portion of it forward to a young man who would now carry it into a school in Busan, and from that school into the lives of students who would carry it further still, altered by each life it passed through, but continuous, the way water is continuous through every vessel it inhabits. He put on his training clothes. The morning was waiting. He went to meet it.